Hello and welcome to the Not My Job Pod. I am your host, Emily Gant, and today we are joined by one of my longest friends in the world. We've been friends since we were 4 years old. So that is, yeah, roughly 30 years, 31 years. That's crazy. So today we are joined by Lauren Morgan, who is a fourth year medical student, certified brain injury specialist, published academic researcher, and wellness coach. And I just love that, people I met when I was 4 years old are doing like big things now. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So I'm super excited to talk to you today because A, it's been a while since we've caught up, but B, I feel like I don't know the details of what you've been up to. I know that in general, you've always wanted to be a doctor. That was something I feel has never wavered, literally ever, your whole life. And now you're doing it. So congratulations, first off. But for those who don't know you, can you just go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Lauren Morgan, and I'm a non traditional medical student. So, I'm going through my fourth year at age 34 with a kid that I had during medical school. And it has been a very winding road to get here. I always knew that I wanted to be a physician. That started really early. I had three of my grandparents pass away when I was 5 years old. So, all in the span of a year. So, there was just a lot of death and me spending a lot of time in hospitals, visiting them and watching doctors take care of them. And that's probably where I was first inspired to work in healthcare. And then I'd like play with my little medical themed Barbies when I was a child. So it was just, I don't know, something that I always saw myself doing. And I guess, so we went to college together as well at Georgia Tech. And that's where I did psychology and biomedical engineering. I was pre med. I wanted to go straight into medical school. That was not in the cards for me. That's a long conversation that we can tease out if you want in like the later conversation. But suffice it to say, I was not prepared to go to medical school immediately following my undergrad. So I decided to do what anyone does who still wants to go to med school but isn't going to make it happen right after. And I just beefed up my resume. I worked in neuroscience research. That's where I got my first publication. I worked as a brain injury specialist, starting off as a life skills counselor and also a caregiver. And then that kind of morphed throughout the pandemic into starting my own business as a wellness coach, where I took what I had learned as a counselor and started coaching people through like habit building, mindset, meditation, those sorts of things. And then finally in 2019, I took the MCAT. I'd had to take a couple extra courses here and there post baccalaureate, which I did for the prereqs, and then applied to medical school and went through a master's program as well. And finally matriculated in 2022. So now I'm here with like a million different hats, but I feel like all of those hats have enriched my ability to be a really good physician once I graduate. So that's where I'm at right now.
And I love it because I think there's this narrative, like for people who are finishing university right now, that they're like, oh, I need to have it all figured out. And in reality, like, I don't know, I'll speak for both of us. We were like pretty terrible people when, when we were in university. We just like had no concept of like the real world. I don't know, I was all over the place. We were just, parties over grades every day, more so for me than for you. We were just not, we didn't have it together. I didn't have like internships or anything like that. Like I had no qualifications. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we're very similar in that we left and then we were like, okay, we gotta get some life experience and then we can circle back to the real stuff. So I love that. Yeah, you've made it. It's always been the plan. So there was never any doubt that you were going to make it, but I'm happy. I don't know. I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that because honestly, I kind of gave up on myself after I graduated from tech for a little bit. I had a very close family member tell me, you're never going to get in with the way that you performed in undergrad. You need to give up that dream and just do something else. And that was really heartbreaking for me. And that also kind of sent me into this crazy spiral as well with my mental health because I felt purposeless. But, I just kept taking one step at a time and just kind of one day woke up after I had worked for enough time in the neuroscience research and the brain injury counseling. And I was like, why did I give up on being a doctor? And what would it take for me to get there now? And that was kind of a moment for me where I was like, oh, okay, I just need to put one foot in front of the other. I need to finish the prereqs. Okay, check. I didn't fail any of them. Keep going. Okay, now I need to take the MCAT. Check. I got a competitive score enough where I should be spending money on applications, you know? So it was just one of those like, okay, if I fail at any step along the way, like I'll just find something else. But I would regret the rest of my life if I didn't try, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I feel like, yeah, it's not that it wasn't hard work. It was that, so I don't want to say like, oh, it sounds like it was easy because it doesn't sound easy at all, but it does sound like seamless, maybe we can say, or maybe there's a better word. I don't know. But like,
I think that, I mean, if you want to get a little woo woo about it, like the universe definitely was conspiring in my favor. I had to learn a lot through my experiences. And then my experiences were wonderful talking points for medical school applications. And they really bolstered the depth that I have to be able to connect with patients and like see disparities and try and address them and not just be the academic, I don't know, the doctor that everyone kind of hates, where they can't connect with their patient and they know everything up here, but they're not communicating it properly, or they're not listening to their patient. They're not working with them to get to the bottom of things. And so I feel like, yeah, all of those experiences, though it delayed me, it also shaped me.
you're always so eloquent. I love it.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's true though. It's like I think about that all the time, like especially in my line of work, anyone could be better at me in 2 years because the industry is always changing. And so what kind of like stands me out though is the fact that I don't know, I just have like life experience and panache. So it's like I'm like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Like let's sit down and do it. And I feel like that's kind of the difference that comes with being older, maybe.
I totally agree. Yeah. My class also, particularly to my school and the cohort that I'm in, we are a little older and we are the school's favorite. I think because of that. Like we don't do a lot of drama. You know, we work really hard, we help each other, we look out for each other. A lot of people speak to medical school being like really toxic and competitive, and I haven't really gotten those vibes from my classmates, which I feel really grateful and lucky for. And so, yeah, I agree. With age, there comes this kind of deep breath and like, hey, what if we work together on this instead of comparing each other or tearing each other down or making it more difficult on one another? And I have really, really relished being in this sort of community.
I think yeah, that is, I wish there was more of that everywhere all the time. Currently, yeah, in my own workplace, it's like very much like you're sinking a little bit. We're all gonna like, rally around to help. And that's, it's good for everyone. It's good for like the wider, workplace or yeah, my friends are like that too. It's definitely a quality that I look for. So despite the fact that it's, I'm sure, very intense, it's yeah, I guess a little bit, it's like a warm hug, maybe.
Yes, extreme trauma bonding.
Extreme trauma bonding, making friendships.
Yes.
So I am curious though, about because you are pursuing because there's I'm gonna butcher this. There's medical doctors and then there's DO, so MD and DO.
Mhm.
So what is DO and like why did you decide to pursue that one?
Yeah. So I think it's important to mention that at the beginning of this journey, when I was an undergrad and when I was pre med, I really had my eye on MD and medical doctor. And I actually had never heard of a DO. And DO stands for Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine. The short version of the difference is that DOs and MDs, we have basically the same education. We do take two different sets of board exams because DOs also have osteopathic manipulation that they learn, which is about 200 extra hours of learning how to palpate and basically identify things called somatic dysfunctions. in the body. So these can be musculoskeletal issues. They can be buildup of lymph, but you can feel it. And just to kind of clarify, like a fracture is not a somatic dysfunction because it can't be fixed with OMT. That's when you cast it. That's when we're just like an MD and we do that.
What is OMT?
So OMT is osteopathic manipulative treatment. I'm actually spending an extra year in medical school learning more about it and teaching the first and second years this year, which is why I have time to do this podcast, which is fantastic. And it's basically you find the somatic dysfunctions and then we have certain techniques that can fix the somatic dysfunction. So I can feel a vertebrae rotated in the cervical spine or the thoracic spine, and I know techniques that will rotate it back to center. And a lot of times, this is what's causing that pulling in the back of your neck when you have a crick or something. So I can fix those sorts of things. Come into this free clinic that I'm working at on Tuesday, and her legs are really swollen, and it wasn't from heart failure or anything systemic like that. It's just lymph buildup. And so I have a bunch of techniques where I can drain all of that for her. I can drain people's sinuses. I can open their eustachian tubes. It's pretty cool. There's also like visceral techniques that you can do. So you can start activating parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. You can activate the gut and help move things along there. So there's so many applications that I have really just like barely started touching the surface on, and I'm spending a whole year kind of getting deeper into it now. But that's the main difference I would say between DO and MD is that DOs get OMT training, but we go to the same residencies. Our residencies merged in between 2016 and I think it finished in either 2020 or 2022. But so we're completely merged. We apply to the same residency programs essentially. A lot of DOs will actually take the MD board exams too. So we take two exams, the DO one and the MD, just because a lot of residencies with the new integration, they like to see the MD score to like really be able to compare. So we can become surgeons, we can become neurologists, we can become anything an MD can. We have those privileges in all 50 states. And it's just the OMT. Again, that's really the thing. And then some DOs don't even practice OMT. So it's kind of up to you how much you want to apply it. You can just go through DO school, pass your boards, which does have OMT on it. So you do need to kind of know it. But then after that, you really don't have to use it ever again if you end up not enjoying it or something like that. But I personally love it. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to go DO instead of MD. I really liked the idea of being able to put my hands on someone and help alleviate pain or address something that's physically bothering them. And they walk out of the visit and be like, I actually feel a little better. Because the difference that I see is when I was working in an urgent care clinic and my preceptor was an MD, his approach is, oh, they have stiffness in their neck. I'll give them a muscle relaxant and prescribe them PT and then send them on their way, which isn't wrong. And I'm not wanting to say that, MDs are worse by any means. It's just that's what they're equipped to do with their training, but this person is still walking out the door without any relief whatsoever. And so I just enjoy the idea of maybe giving them a little something when they walk out the door. I'll still give them a muscle relaxant and I'll still say, hey, you should follow up with PT, but I'm also able to do something for them in that moment. And I really appreciated that.
So
Additionally, there are 4 pillars of osteopathic medicine that kind of separate us from MD. They're not the same pillars that medical doctorates use. And ours are that the body is a unit, that structure and function are interrelated. We treat based on these principles. And again, I think allopathic medicine has kind of moved towards this model. So again, it's not this hard difference, but at least in my experience, when I talk to patients or like friends and they know what a DO is and they've had a DO be their doctor, they're like, oh, I really enjoyed that. I really felt like they looked at the whole person. So there is some sort of, I guess, subjective difference there where people feel more seen and whole in that capacity.
yeah, it doesn't surprise me that you went this route as well because I think about this all the time in terms of like psychology, which I know is, your bachelor's. And it's wild to me that your medical doctor prescribes you pills for a psychological issue that you have that you talk to a whole different person about. And to me, I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why is the person writing me like brain altering chemical substances, not the one talking to me about my problems? And that was like the first time that I was like, oh wow, those things don't quite match up. And then yeah, just in general, like yeah, you go in with like a problem, and they're like, I'm like, I don't know, my knee hurts, and they're like, oh, okay, well here's a muscle relaxer, here's like whatever the thing is, and I'm like, that doesn't fix the root of the problem. So yeah, I do think that is incredibly valuable. So I'm curious how your experience is working at like a brain trauma center, your background in psychology, and now all of this like medical studies, like how do those things kind of converge under the pillars of being a DO?
Totally. So I think it's important to note that honestly, my backup plan was probably going to be to get a PhD in psychology and just kind of further get into mental health because that's something I'm very passionate about. And I was at a crossroads while working in my neuroscience lab. Like, okay, do I go the doctor route, as in like physician route, or do I go the doctor as in like more academic and like talk therapy route? And my fascination with the mind comes down to the mind body connection. Like, body keeps the score, Bessel van der Kolk type stuff. And so again, I was faced with this realization that I feel like I'd be regretting not trying to become a physician because physicians in their training are pretty much experts in anatomy and physiology and the bodily workings. And so I felt like I'd spent a lot of time and effort in my undergrad studying the mind. And then I have the drive to continue studying the mind outside of medicine just because it's one of my passions. And so I wanted to then focus on the body so that I could then bring both back into an integration in my practice. And I did strongly consider doing the psychiatry route. My psychiatry rotation was so much fun. I spent it at an outpatient clinic that does ketamine therapy and TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. So they are helping the people who SSRIs fail essentially, which I appreciated because in my personal experience, SSRIs kind of failed me. Like it just didn't work for me. I think that SSRIs and other mental health medications are beneficial for a lot of people, and a lot of people really find stability through them. And so I never want to talk smack about them. But there is this part of the population where they don't work at all. And so what do we do for them? How do we address them? And so it was so much fun to work at a clinic that was looking into that because that was another one of my personal passions and kind of insights into the field. And while that was so much fun and I had so many meaningful conversations with people, like before their ketamine sessions, they'd start asking me about like ego death and things like that. And I also do research in psychedelic medicine. So, and ketamine is considered a psychedelic. So that was just amazing. I do feel like I'm pulled to a different specialty because I didn't want to be so bogged down with SSRIs all the time and that being first line. And also, here's my pause because my brain just turned off. But also that, so in psychiatry, it's kind of taboo to touch people. And I want to do OMT. I want to help with the body as well. And so that was one of my other reservations, I guess, about specializing. And then also, I hate being limited. So I want to be able to do everything. So at this point, I'm really thinking family medicine. And a lot of physicians will tell you that family medicine gets a lot of mental health because you're the first line. You're the first person that they see when they come with an issue, whether that's addiction or depression. Like I'm the one that's screening it and recognized as a family medicine doctor. And so that is something that's kind of pulled me towards that path.
Yeah,
And
I love that. And I love that what you do now kind of brings in so many different interests. Because I mean, maybe, I never had the doubt that you would be a doctor one day. So it was always interesting to me. Like, I remember like years and years ago, like we were in university, we're like, 18, 19 years old. And you're like, I feel like they should be doing more studies on like ketamine and how it can help people, or like psychedelics and mushrooms. Like there's something here for like curing depression. And I was like, you are crazy. We're just like idiot college kids. And you're like, no, this is real. This is real. We can like do something with it. And then I think it was like years later, I thought of you because I was just like scrolling the internet and I like read this study about like how MDMA trials were like increasing. I don't remember the headline, but I was like, oh, yeah, Lauren called this out like 5 years ago before anyone was testing on, people were just talking about ketamine like it was a horse tranquilizer at that time slash club drug. And so it was really, yeah, it was really interesting. I was like, oh my God, she was right. Like they are testing psychedelics and making people feel happier. So I don't know. It was really, I thought of you, or I still think of you whenever I read one of those articles.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been to the Psychedelic Science Conference twice now, in 2023. And then this past year, 2025, I actually presented research this last time, which was super exciting for me and like really full circle because I just went as a medical student to learn in 2023. And that was such a magical experience for me because I just went to all of the research talks and I'd actually written a term paper in my behavioral psychopharmacology class in undergrad at Tech on psilocybin and the benefits of psilocybin. And back then, all they'd really seen was they'd tried it out in end of life care, like palliative care, like helping people reconcile with the fact that they're at the end of life and them finding so much peace actually through their psilocybin experiences. And then they had also found at that point that psilocybin experiences would actually change personality scores in the big five of personality, which is super rare. Usually, your personality domains don't change very much after you're an adult. And the only things that can change them are like a big life event, like the death of someone really important, a divorce, something that's absolutely life shattering in a way, and kind of like
What
ego dissolving.
what are the five core if you can't name all I mean you probably can name all five. I just didn't want to whenever somebody's like name five of whatever it is, I'm like, I can only name four. But what are the core parts of a personality that usually don't change?
Yeah, so we have the big five, and the mnemonic is ocean.
You do
So
know them, don't you?
I'm double checking them, but I do know them. Yeah. But there's a nice mnemonic to keep them straight. So, yeah. So there's ocean. O is for openness to experience. C is conscientiousness. E is extroversion. A is agreeableness. And then N is neuroticism. And they found changes in openness and then like increases in openness with psilocybin and then decreases in neuroticism more specifically. So that was really old stuff that's been around since I was in my undergrad and I graduated in 15. But I got to go to a talk of, one of the people I'd cited in that paper like 10 years ago, which was amazing, Dr. Robin Carhart Harris. And listening to his newest research and then like Dr. Gould Dolan's research was amazing in 2023. I'm going to share one more nerdy thing about it just because it's fantastic.
Please.
But what we've found with psychedelics, including ketamine, so we're talking about classical psychedelics, which are like psilocybin, LSD, mescaline. And then there's also like DMT, like ayahuasca, and then ketamine. And then there's also MDMA. So those are kind of like your core psychedelics that we're studying at this point. What we found in mouse models is that when given these substances, you can actually reopen the critical periods in their brain. So, a critical period from psychology is we all go through them as we're growing as babies and children, and it's how we learn language or learn things really quickly because we have these like bursts of neurogenesis where all of our neurons start growing more and they start connecting more. And we go through this process of like some parts of the brain connect more, some prune, some connect more, some prune, and it's all about use it or lose it. So like whatever you're doing, like that's going to create a stronger connection. Whatever you're not doing, that's going to kind of wither away. So we have these things called critical periods where the brain is basically super focused on creating more connections, and we can reopen those with psychedelics, which is wild. We haven't really seen that before, I don't think, with other substances. And what was even cooler is that these critical windows that can be reopened again, they actually correlate to how long your trip is. So ketamine is like the shortest trip. So that is it's about 2 hours. And so your critical window opens up for 48 hours. So after that, you can, whatever you're focusing on, you are building your brain towards it. So I always told people at the ketamine clinic, like after your session, you need to have therapy within 48 hours of this experience if you want the most bang out of your buck. And then it just gets progressively longer and longer. I don't have the other critical windows memorized, so I won't speak on them, but essentially the trip in psilocybin's like 6 to 8 hours, and so that's a longer critical window that's open for a longer period of time, longer than 48 hours. And then LSD is more like 8 to 10 hours, and so that's even a longer window, with ibogaine being the longest because ibogaine is just on another level. Like the trip itself I think is like 24 to 48 hours, which is crazy. But
I've never even heard of that.
It's it's really popular in opiate addiction. So people
Okay.
swear by it. Man, that's another thing I can go off on because I went to a talk where Stanford did a study on it, and they actually found people's brain ages were reversing after taking ibogaine. So their brains were scoring younger than before they took the ibogaine, and it was helping rebuild people after traumatic brain injury because they did it on veterans that had had TBIs. And yeah, it is crazy what's coming out in that field right now. It almost feels made up with how significant the results are and like what they're saying is happening.
Now, is this usually confined though to like psychological growth, or is it like, this is going to sound like a stupid question. Is it like, I can do ketamine and then study the next day and learn more stuff? Or it's more like you do ketamine and then you are, introspective and you can uncover things about yourself?
I think all of the above. And then even something else that you didn't mention, which is I could go out and play soccer the next day and get better with my motor skills as well.
That's wild. That is wild. And now I'm curious too, because, we grew up in, the 90s, the war on drugs and I don't know, all the stigma that comes with that kind of thing.
Dare.
And I wonder, I can imagine that today in the medical field, there's still a lot of stigma against treatments that aren't by the book, or like you said, where SSRIs are always like that first line of defense against anything that's going wrong in the brain psychologically. I guess I'm wondering, like, how much resistance do you usually hear in medical communities when you're talking about this kind of thing?
That's a great question. I personally haven't met that much resistance. I don't know if it's just because I'm in a good place. Like, I noticed during my master's program that my school featured a student who was doing research on DMT on their website. So I knew my school was friendly. When I did my psilocybin research that we presented at the psychedelic conference, we actually presented it at our school's symposium first, and they gave us first place for our stuff. So I have received a lot of praise right now, but I do know that there are still places that are more closed off to it. I think that I do a lot of this research with one of my best friends that's in medical school, and he and I are pretty focused on making sure that we end up in a residency that's psychedelic friendly. Even when, because he's on sub-Is right now while I do this scholar year, and he's saying that while he's out there talking to different physicians, no one is really acting negatively towards it because I think that there is robust research coming out. So it's becoming more and more respected. But sometimes they're just more indifferent to it. Like they're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Same thing. Like we have a professor at our school who, ironically, our poster sat outside of his office for a year, and he was like, yeah, I don't know about that when we would talk to him. And he started coming around and like sending my friend articles about like the psilocybin research coming out and the psychedelic research coming out. And so I think that people are starting to pay attention and change their minds and look into it more and at least get curious. I think it's worth being curious about. But yeah, I haven't encountered the stigma personally yet, but I'm sure that it exists. I think I'm just lucky in the spaces that I have been posed in.
That makes sense. Often, I guess, because of like the bubble that I live in, sometimes I'll just be talking to my friends and everything's normal. And then I don't know, I end up talking to someone who's like not in my bubble and they say something and I'm like, oh. people actually think that way, and I kind of forget that yeah, that's the reality for some people. And yeah, I don't know, it's interesting, the
Definitely.
echo chamber, I guess. But I want to switch gears a little bit because honestly, I could talk to you probably for multiple hours just on this topic alone. I have so many follow-up questions, but I don't want to make it a whole hour about psychedelics. And I know it's kind of your area of expertise in a way, but you have other areas of expertise as well. So yeah, I'm kind of curious too, in your training, what has been like kind of the hardest or most like unexpected part, or something that maybe you were excited to learn and now that you learned it, you're like, I don't care, or I didn't want to learn this part. What's kind of been a big challenge?
That's okay. That's gonna take me a second.
You could take a second.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, the biggest challenge was going out and working in a clinical setting after undergrad and then coming back to med school. And the first 2 years of med school are just books and lectures and exams. And so I almost want to say like it wasn't just any one topic or like any one thing. It was just more of like the structure of those first 2 years was so incredibly painful for me because I am a kinesthetic learner. Now that I've done a year in clinical medicine and been seeing patients and applying everything I learned in the first 2 years, I'm so much happier. It's sticking so much more because it's like, I remember this person who had this constellation of symptoms and it all fits together a lot more versus I just hate sitting in a lecture hall and I hate just rote memorization that doesn't have much context or like I have to build the context myself out of like imaginary situation. So that was probably the most difficult thing for me. And then like from that, my schedule not being my own anymore was terrible. I ended up starting to have to just like skip going to live lecture and I'd watch the recordings on 2 times speed so that I could like guard my time. So I'd be able to have time to like go to the gym because working out is such a big part of my mental health that I was like, I can't just not go to the gym, but there's not enough hours in the day unless I'm watching my lectures at 2 times speed.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that a lot actually, about how education's in some ways is wasted on the young people. Because if I could go back now, I would study. Well, now I know that it doesn't, at least in my case, it doesn't really matter what I studied. I could have just done anything. And I think I would have chosen something that was just like more la di da, a bit more fun. But then also, I don't know, like there was this one class in university, it was like Python, it was coding like 101, and we had to like do this basic Python program to pass the course. And I was literally like, I'm not going to graduate because I cannot code in this stupid language. And I like cried over this course so much. I hated it, hated it, hated it, hated it. And yeah, I just like I couldn't get the hang of it. And I passed with a D, which was the bare minimum that I literally, it was like percent. Like it was not it was a pass. It was not a high pass. And I use Python in my day to day at work most days. And, it is just funny because, like, I don't know, I'm like typing up some script or like looking at, pieces of code that need to be merged. Now a lot of it's done with AI and ChatGPT. But like, yeah, I don't know. I look at it and I'm like, oh, let me pick out this chunk and then like figure out how to, make this do that. And like, it's not stressful anymore. And I just wonder how many things are like that, like that we could be learning in person instead of,
Yeah.
in a classroom. And yeah, going back to
Yeah.
school must have been exhausting.
Yeah, actually, just like you, I hated CS at Tech. I had to do MATLAB for the
Mhm.
BME portion, and I hated that so much. And then I had to learn Python for physics. And I was like, what is the point of this? I hate this. And then we used MATLAB for my neuroscience lab and processing EEG data and fMRI data. And finally, I was like, and then my senior year at Tech, I took a bioinformatics class. And so that's where we actually were given a bunch of patient data from a cardiac uh, surgeon. And we were able to write a code that actually predicted complications in certain patient populations, like based on, how their blood pressure was doing before surgery or like their BMI before surgery or just like all of their different demographics. We used the system to crunch the numbers. We used machine learning for it. And I was like, oh, like this is really useful because this can help a surgeon weigh the risks of like, oh, is this person more at risk for a complication than this patient over here? And that's fantastic. There's a lot of talk about AI replacing doctors completely. I am not worried about that whatsoever. You still need the human touch to understand nuance, to palpate someone, to feel a mass that's in their abdomen or in their neck or wherever it is. You still need a human, but I think that AI is going to be an amazing tool that's going to like cut down on the time we spend doing things that are not as like patient care related, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I don't know, kind of a prediction from the tech side, but yeah, I feel like AI is like it's an incredible tool the way that it is now. I don't think it's going to get much better than it already is in the next, I don't know, few years. I think it's kind of a bubble there because I think people now are expecting in 5 years that this thing is going to be sentient, and I'm like, no, it's a language model. It just matches up like probability of vector spaces and how things interact with each other. And so yeah, I'm like every conversation you're having is just like a factor of like a cosine similarity of something else. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
It
weird.
it does scare me that people try to use it for medical advice. That freaks me out. Just because, yeah, it shouldn't be used that way. And people get really bad advice. I don't know if you've seen the recent headline that came out of some dude wanted to minimize salt in his diet because he was having high blood pressure. And ChatGPT told him to take sodium bromide instead of sodium chloride. And he ended up poisoning himself and ended up in the hospital after several weeks of adding sodium bromide to his diet, which is usually in cleaning products. So just wild. I don't know what happened there, but that was not good. We do have an AI tool that only pulls from peer reviewed sources that if you have like a medical license or if you have a medical student ID, you can access for free. And I think that's been really cool to play around with because I can ask it medical questions and it'll just spit back all of these sources. It doesn't hallucinate sources. And I can actually read through the papers that it's citing to get like a better idea of not only like a disease process, but also like what is the cutting edge research behind it
Mhm.
right now. So that's been cool. But
Yeah, AI is a tool to like sort through things. Great. AI is a tool to like think through things. It doesn't critically think. Yeah, definitely a little bit cringe there. I want to know though, because you are very, I don't know, I would say that you are a very logical person, but you are also, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I would say you're a very logical person, but you also do dabble a little bit in the woo woo, as I've said to a few people on this podcast.
I do.
I
I
don't,
do.
yeah, I don't know what it says about me that I have a lot of friends who do dabble in the woo woo a little bit more than I do. I feel like I need it to balance out my none of this is real thought space. But I feel like over time, like it's kind of like things go in a circle where I'm like, we're living in a simulation. And then I'm like, what's the meaning of life? It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Oh, we've arrived at spirituality. And so
Yes. Yes.
there's like this weird, I don't know, but I guess how do you reckon with your need for things to be like logical and numerical and research backed, and that spiritual aspect within, yeah, studying medicine?
Yeah. So I just want to say I really appreciate the nihilism to absurdism pipeline. I think it's the only way to go. Uh, Nothing matters, and therefore I create my meaning and everything means to me. That's kind of where I've found my greatest peace, I guess, if you want to get spiritual about it. But yeah, I wrestle a lot with my woo woo and my logical, medical, researchy brain. But I think that they complement each other very well because having gone through research and successfully published, I know what it takes to justify yourself in the scientific world. And that's very helpful to bring into practice with the woo woo because most people in the woo woo spaces don't really have that skill. And so I think that's why things can kind of spin so far out of control there because no one's checking anything. And it's just like, well, I've decided it's real, so it's real. Yeah, that's like a whole nother conversation. But so for me personally, the way that I hold that tension, because I am all about kind of holding opposites and then I find a tension in those opposites. And then if you're into Jungian psychology, the idea is that from the tension of these two opposites, you yield this like third resolution almost from those two opposites. And so that's kind of what I've been alchemizing in my personal life. I got training in Reiki. So
Mhm.
I became a Reiki master in 2021.
What does that mean for people who don't know what Reiki is?
So Reiki, okay, so full disclosure too, I used to like roll my eyes when people would be like, I'm a Reiki master. I'd be like, oh God, one of these. And so it's basically a form of energy manipulation. Anyone can do it. I kind of feel like we're all kind of manipulating our energy all the time, even if it's unconscious. But Reiki is the intentional manipulation of it, and it is a lineage. So you have to be activated by someone who is carrying that consciousness, which sounds real out there, but it kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? Like when you have a good teacher, it's someone that's lived it, right? And so that's kind of the idea here with Reiki is it needs to be passed from someone who is consciously manipulating it and knows the symbols and kind of can show you how it works. And I thought it was all bullshit until my friend who was living in Qatar at the time. So she was literally across the world from me. We were on Zoom catching up, and I was really just vulnerably sharing about a lot of pain that I was experiencing in my life emotionally. And she said, "Can I offer you some Reiki?" And I'm never going to turn down like kindness. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to be like, "No, don't pray for me." You know,
I was gonna say I'm the same way. Like when a Christian's like, "I'll pray for you," I'm like, "Thanks."
yeah, yeah, like I appreciate the kindness, the kind sentiment. So I'm like, sure. And she's like, okay, just close your eyes, get into a receiving state. And the moment that she started sending it to me, my entire body lit up with this like heat and it rose all the way up to my head. And then just tears started streaming down my face. She wasn't saying anything. It was completely silent. She didn't tell me when she was starting. Like, she just told me to close my eyes and, like, be ready for it, and then all of a sudden, like, I had this insane visceral experience. I started bawling. I felt unconditional love. Like, I was just like, "What did you just do to me?" And after that, I was like, "Okay, whatever you have tapped into is real because it affected me from halfway across the world. And so, who did you learn from?" So she turned me on to her teacher, and I went through his training. He's actually based out of the UK. So I did it all on Zoom, but it was incredibly powerful, even over Zoom. Like, my whole activation experience was also really physical for me. Like, I felt it in my body in a way that I couldn't deny that it was real for me. And that was that. And so then, Reiki level 1 is just about healing yourself and learning how to manipulate it in your own body. Reiki level 2 is about starting to send it to other people. And then Reiki mastery is where you master it and become a teacher as well. And I did all three, but when I started working on sending it to other people, my little researcher hat came on and like my little logical side came out. And I was like, let's test this now. Like, is this crap or is there something to this? And I just offered them for free. I didn't feel good about taking a lot of money from people like while I was learning how to do it. And it was an experiment for me. Like, I wanted to make sure whatever I was doing was real. So I would just set up these 15-minute sessions with whoever wanted to sign up. Like, I just kind of posted online, like, hey, like, who wants to do this with me? It's free. Would you like some Reiki? And people signed up and would have crazy experiences. Like, I'd go through like a little mini counseling session at the beginning. I'd be like, what's your focus? What's going on in your life right now? What's happening? They kind of give me a spiel, like, this is what I'm intending. And then I kind of systematically like built this structure that I liked for how it would go. And then we'd close our eyes and I would start channeling and sending it to them. Then the weird stuff started happening. I started seeing things in my mind's eye, like um that were very natural. Like, I'm talking about like rain clouds or like water or like earth, very like elemental stuff. And the elements would be doing something, interacting with the person that I was sending Reiki to. And so I started sharing those things with me or sharing those things with them and getting like crazy responses. Like I'd be like, there's this electric blue light that is currently penetrating your body. And this person's like, that's my favorite color. And like, I did not know this about that person. Like they weren't wearing electric blue. I had only spoken to them like a handful of times in my life. They were an acquaintance. Like, and I was just like, what is going on? So, and then I would follow up with them afterwards and I'd be like, did whatever you intend, like, how are you feeling about that? Like, did we actually address it? Is everything the same? You know, and I wasn't attached to an outcome either. I kind of wanted people to be like, yeah, this is bullshit and nothing happened. Cause then I could be like, all right, case closed, no more of this. But every time they were like, no, I really feel like that helped move things out of me. Like I feel lighter, I feel clearer, I feel more at peace with what I'm wrestling with. I found a resolution 2 days later. Some people came to me like having money issues and they're like, I got more money. And I'm like, why can't that happen to me? Like,
Why can't I Reiki myself some cash?
so,
You've got
and
some blocker that you don't believe that it's real. That's why you haven't arrived at all that money, you know?
maybe, yeah. I mean, I just really like to measure twice, cut once. That's the engineering part of me, you know? Like, so I'm just always like, testing it. And I just keep repeatedly getting feedback that's like, there's something here. And I don't know how to explain it. I've looked up papers about Reiki, like in medical journals and stuff, and it's pretty shaky and they're not like very well designed. So, like, it's not super exciting to talk about that stuff, but like, there is something there. I think maybe in the future I could possibly try and submit to it, since I do practice it and just kind of try and design something that makes it a little more irrefutable and like a little less confoundy, but that's kind of like a
Yeah.
distant future thing.
I mean, I do buy into, we don't have all of like the senses. So like, the other animals see things differently. And like the odds are like that age-old conversation of like your orange is my blue. Like
Mhm.
odds are, yes, we all see colors differently. There's what was the other thing? Oh, like I was listening to a podcast about like this beetle has like this one mechanism to survive and it's like to mate. And so in order to do that, it just looks for this like glossy surface and it's like female beetle and it mates and then it dies. But then these scientists were like, yeah, but what happens if we just like put a beer bottle down because it's like the same texture? And like the males would like mate with the beer bottle and then die. And I was like, wow, this beetle can't even zoom out enough to see that this shiny thing is not a female beetle. But what are the things that, we humans can't zoom out and see or understand or smell or taste or whatever other senses there are? So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that like dives into, I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to see like, more evidence of that being real. But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, maybe my little pea brain can't process the evidence. And that's true as well. Yeah. And I think the most like woo woo thing that I got into, not got into, but like I went on like a reading rabbit hole where all these like studies of like 3-year-old kids who like can remember their past lives. And then they like actually, there's like this department at the University of Virginia. And then they
Yeah.
go and they actually like, this kid will give an interview and then they go find the person that they're talking about. And there's no way this 3-year-old would know this family or like these people like across the world. And I was like, that is nuts.
I've gone down that rabbit hole too, and that stuff blows my mind as well. Yeah, like stuff about how like they'll know where the grave of someone is from their old life. And yeah, that stuff is wild.
And then they just forget it by age 4. And so I'm like, something funky. Or I don't know. I've actually watched like my friend's son be like, no, we can't walk through there. That's spooky. And George is in the hallway. And like, he's not saying it like he's scared. It's just kind of like, I don't know. And I'm like, what are we like? I don't know. Kids are obviously imaginative, but also like sometimes the way that they say things is just like really unnerving. And I'm like, okay, I guess George is in the hallway. We don't have to go through there."
Yeah, I can't wait until my son is verbal. I really want to know what's going on in there.
That is the perfect segue as well, because it's absolutely mad crazy to me that you are doing all of this plus with having, well, I guess he's not a newborn anymore, but he's still a baby. He's still a baby, and you are managing a full course load, all this work, working, yeah, just everything we just talked about. And now you're a mom. How does that feel? Are you just like, what?
Yeah, it's crazy. Um, I was really apprehensive about becoming a mother in medical school when I first started thinking about it. But as far as age is concerned, and early menopause runs in my family, and I want more than one kid. And so I just kind of had this conversation with my husband that was like, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to start. And honestly, we have had one, two, three, four, five, six other people in my class just alone actually give birth during medical training at some point. So, or I think maybe five, and then the sixth one is on the way. And then we had one girl that gave birth twice, which God bless her soul. Yeah, like that. And she's still graduating on time. And I'm just like, these people are super women. And yeah, it's really difficult, but I will say that I wouldn't do it any other way. I don't have any regrets in doing it. I am solo parenting right now because my husband is military, so he couldn't move with me back to campus. And that has added another incredibly complicated layer to my life just because we co-parent so well together. And so to not have my other half and my co-parent with me anymore is having my son in medical school definitely changed my trajectory. Like if I hadn't had him, I think I would be specializing in neurology. That was always the path that I was going to take. And then I had him and experienced motherhood and experienced medical birth. And that was a really intense and crazy experience that we honestly don't have time for. But suffice it to say, I went through my OB/GYN rotation, and it was actually at the hospital that I gave birth at. So that was a weird, like, full
Uh,
circle. Yeah. And after I went through that rotation, I was just like, I can't live without assisting with births. But again, I don't want to be pigeonholed. So I'm like, I found a bunch of family medicine programs that actually have a lot of obstetric training, and even to the point where I could be the first surgeon on a C-section. So I was like, all right, I'll have to get my neuro and psych fix through FM because I don't know how to bring into neurology. You know what I mean? So figuring out a way to put it all together.
Yeah, but I mean, that's to me, that's kind of been the theme of your life. You know, you find things that you're interested in, whether that's, the brain and psychedelics, and then that turning into, real research, or, yeah, just I feel like that's one example of many that, came together in your life to make you who you are today. And then, yeah, the path kind of pushes you, and now you
Yeah.
have a son, and, now you're doing family medicine. And so, yeah, who would have thought? But it doesn't mean that it's the end for neurology.
Yes. Yeah. The neurology conference that I went to, actually, it was like a summit on multiple sclerosis, actually, that I really enjoyed. And the whole aim of it was actually to educate both neurologists, but also general practitioners. So I see a place for me to just be really passionate about certain topics and then dive into them more so that I can just better serve my patients. Because I think part of the issue with the American healthcare model right now is that we have like specialized so much that like nothing is our problem and it's always someone else's. And we're always needing to refer out here, refer out there. And then this person has like a million, um, like medical appointments that they have to make. They're out like 6 months in advance. They don't get any answers in between. And so again, I find this purpose in being a family medicine practitioner that maybe can do a little research on what's going on with them and still refer them out to a specialist, because specialists are useful. Don't get me wrong. They're going to know way more than I will ever about whatever they've specialized in. However, I can do my due diligence and start trying to help make things a little more comfortable for them as they're waiting for that appointment, or just help manage something that's more complex that other practitioners would say, "This is over my head, so no, I'm not gonna do it."
Definitely. I mean, I think we need more of that, because sometimes, like you said, you go in with one pain, and then it turns out that it's actually a completely different part of the body that maybe just can relieve, that's causing that. And then, yeah, the all the side questions of, like, well, then what are your stress levels like? And that's what's causing physical pain. And like, yeah, it's that mind body connection. So I know I would be like pleasantly surprised and shocked if, I went to the doctor for like a physical symptom and then they were asking me about like, I don't know, that can go the other way though, where like, I don't know, you go in with a physical symptom, they're like, you're fine. I'm like, okay, no, I'm not fine.
I mean, honestly, it's the psychosomatic issues and like the functional neurology issues that are the most interesting to me. But unfortunately, since we don't have good explanations for why they're happening, unfortunately, there are so many practitioners out there that are just like, oh, it's in your head. There's nothing to be done. And I don't think that's the right approach at all. I think that there's something to uncover there and to go deeper. And I kind of think that's where like my woo-woo stuff might come in a little more, just to be like, so, how are you really feeling about this? Like, why are you holding that tension in your body there? Why is it manifesting there? And just have like more of a conversation about it that can help them feel more seen and maybe discover what's going on with themselves a little more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's a really well-rounded approach. Have you run into obviously so how long are you going to have to do separate parenting? Like so how long it's the duration of the program or
Just this year. So we're about 2.5 hours away. And I did my master's here and I did my first 2 years of like the lecture based learning here. But we have a rotation site for clinical rotations in his area. So I was able to move back when I was pregnant and then give birth. And he was there and we were living together and it was amazing. And then I was selected to be a student faculty and teach this year. So that meant I had to move back. But then my fourth year rotation, I can do back with him. It's just a lot of like moving around and kind of difficult, but I'm grateful to just have this break because fourth year rotations, we do audition rotations where we actually will go to different places that have residency programs that we might be interested in applying to that cycle. And usually an audition rotation is about 4 weeks. So that's like being a month away from my son and we're still breastfeeding. And so, like, logistically, I think it's just better that we have this year. So even if it's difficult solo parenting, it's better overall, I guess, for just where our life is right now.
yeah. But you've always been like that too, just like the flexibility that's required to get it done. You get it done, but I imagine that it's, yeah, very, very difficult. Do you feel like you have a community though around you to like help with the baby, or is it just, I don't know, the more I talk to like my friends who have kids, I'm like, I would just be depressed.
It's I kind of want to say yes and no because I struggle with asking for help. So there's a little bit of the time where I feel like I'm on my own, but also my dad has really stepped up and because he lives in Seattle, so he'll drive the 2 hours to like come help me over the weekend. So that's been amazing. My husband tries to drive over when he can. And then I am one of four scholars in my year at the school. So I have three classmates that I've known since the beginning that are there. And so, like, if I have to teach in the evenings or something, one of my classmates will actually watch my son for that time. So, and then, they'll also offer to like come over and help me when I'm trying to meal prep for the week and stuff like that. So, I definitely feel a sense of community and a sense of support since they're so kind and supportive to me. I then struggle to ask for more when I need more help. And so there is like a little bit of semblance of like, oh man, I'm on my own. But then also like, no, I'm not. Like I am very well held. And I'm really grateful for that because there's been a lot of other periods in my life where I've not felt held by a community, and that was really painful to experience.
Yeah, I think just in our society today, it leans towards, one kid and then there isn't like a community just like built in where in reality, like I think I read somewhere that like a child should be exposed to at least like 12 adults on a regular basis or something like
Hmm.
that. I could be making that up. I feel like I'm pulling this out of my head, but it was like basically the idea was like a baby should have like adult figures growing up, like multiple adult figures. And like that just happens naturally when you have community and you have friends and, people who come around. But yeah, I think in our society it's quite easy to kind of barricade yourself behind a screen and then not have those connections.
I agree, though. Like, I've seen with my son because he's been in daycare since 6 months or maybe 5 months of age. And he has completely missed the stranger danger milestone. And I think it's because he is just being exposed to new people all the time and new kids, new adults. I mean, we've moved, we've done a lot. We take him out in public. And I think it's really helped him just form a secure attachment to us and like be comfortable. Like I sat him down at daycare and he just starts playing and is like excited to be there. And then he's very excited when I come back to pick him
Yeah.
up. But it's not this whole like screaming, crying, like terrible experience of dropping him off. And I think there's something to be said about that. I think that there's this like very toxic thing going on in mom culture recently that is like daycare is bad and you're not a good mom if you're not there all the time. And I just keep being reminded of that quote, it takes a village. And so if it does take a village, that means there are times that mom isn't there and the village is there. And I think that's healthy. We have to help our children trust the community around them while also teaching them how to look out for something that's dangerous or unsafe. But in the end, I don't want my child growing up feeling isolated or unsafe and all of those icky emotions that honestly I feel like I grew up with. Like I do want him to grow up and see the opportunity in the world and see people around him as potential friends, not potential threats.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. And I'm sure that that is going to be the case. And, um, he's soaking it up like a little sponge with all of his little neurons, and he won't even have to do a bunch of ketamine later to fix it.
That is the hope.
No, okay. So, I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I guess while we wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or say that we didn't get to? Otherwise, I'll just ask you the one ending question and then we'll be on our way.
Wait, what is your one-ended question? Because
My one
I've listened to a couple of your episodes, but I forgot what it is.
I have two. I haven't decided. I don't know. This is all new, so like I don't really know what I'm doing. In my head, I wanted to ask everybody at the end of each episode, like, what's the weirdest thing you've Googled for work? But
Oh, yeah.
also, I don't know. I think people Google, that's me getting too technical. People don't Google anymore either. They like search in different ways. But yeah, I was curious. The question I was going to ask you though, specifically, so you can choose between the questions or answer both. I was going to say, what is one thing that like kindergarten Lauren would be like absolutely shocked to know about her life today?
Okay. All right. So sorry to like make you have
No,
to
no, I did that to you.
but so then, yeah, because sorry, sometimes I have another friend that does podcasts, and her last question is always, "What else do you want to say?" So you know what I mean. So I was like, "Wait." Anyways, so I think the final thing that I want to say, at least, is that I hope that this has been insightful for people to kind of get a picture into like the non-traditional medical path and then also like parenthood throughout that process. And I want anyone to know that if they are interested in like picking back up into a dream that they've had about getting into medicine, it is never too late. One of my great friends at my school, she started med school at 50. And so, I mean, it's a long training process. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you're looking at pretty much give or take like 8 years of training because there's residency after graduation. But at the same time, if it's something that you really, really want to do, it is doable. And it's also doable with a child and with family. Like I do not have the most supportive family. They try, but I see other people in my life that have like way more support. So this is coming from someone who like does struggle with support and I still have found a way to do this. And so like there is a will, there is a way. And I just kind of want to put that out there. Don't give up on your dream just because you see all of these roadblocks. Don't get sucked into a how spiral over and over and over because you cannot figure out the path all before it starts. You're just going to have to think on the fly. And that's kind of been and what I would love to just kind of drive home for people is that just one step at a time, figure it out, do what you love.
I love that. And it kind of answers the question because maybe 4-year-old Lauren would be shocked to know that you know, you're in medical school now and well on your way to being a doctor.
I honestly think so. I think that like teenage and early 20s me would be more shocked, I guess. Because it was kind of the fallout of dealing with all the I mean you've known me, so I had a pretty rough upbringing. That was pretty it was pretty difficult. It was privileged in some ways, and then it was also like deeply emotionally devoid of support and love in a lot of other ways. And I wrestled with that my entire adolescence and all of my 20s. And so I think that's why I kind of gave up on myself at that point too. But I put in the work. I tried to figure out, why am I like this? How do I undo the bad habits that I had? And I think like the biggest thing that got me there was I found this quote and I put it on my phone screen. And it was what would your greatest self do? And start showing up as them. And that was kind of how I untangled everything, I would say. I was like, what would the version of me that wants to become a physician do? What would the physician version of me be doing right now? I'd quit drinking the way that I was. I'd quit smoking cigarettes. You know, I would start taking care of myself so I can walk my talk when I counsel patients about health. And, you know, I would start doing weight bearing exercises. I would start really like taking my life seriously. And through doing all of that, also reflecting on, what are these negative thoughts that I'm having? Why am I having them? Where are they coming from? Whose voice are they in? And how do I replace them with voices and thoughts that are going to get me again to where I want to go? And that's probably been like the most powerful work that I've done. And the reason why younger me would just be amazed that I even made it here, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love that. And I think you nailed it. And I do think younger both of us would be looking at you like, hell yeah, all right.
Oh, I keep flashing back to our all-nighters in the North Ave apartments.
Because you know, we would just leave it sometimes until the last minute, and then we'd have to stay up all night trying to learn something that you know, we just put off. Yeah,
Yeah, I will say that I have not pulled one all-nighter in med school. I
really.
learned my lesson. My sleep is sacred. It's a different story with a baby now, but before before that, no all-nighters, no late nights. I was always lights out by 11 p.m., like at the latest.
I think that's a sign of growth and adulthood.
It is. It is. I'm like, who am I?
Just, just a growing person. All right. Thank you so much for being here. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate it that yeah, in the midst of all this, you still found an hour and a half for an old friend.
Yeah. Oh my God. For you, anything. Thank you.